Hello, Todd Shank here with Premier FPL, coming to you with the Gameweek 6 FPL tips. So on the agenda for today, I'm going to review some of the transfers in and out, along with price rises and predicted price rises. Taking a look at defense and some teams to possibly target or at least keep an eye on. The big discussion of the week is going big at the back, and whether that's going to be a continuing trend or not. Then I'm going to take a look at some of targets for midfield and some possibilities for a wild card if that's something that you're on for this week, and then wrapping up with some looking ahead at fixtures. So starting out, as you can see, some of the top transfers in and top transfers out for this week. Abraham is one of the top in. Pookie returning to one of the top, as well as Cantwell. Mount is an interesting one because he is currently, I know here he's listed 75% chance of playing after he's picked up his injury in midweek. If we go over here to the PremierInjuries.com, they actually have him listed as 25%. Not really sure. I know that there was some rumor this week that he did have an x-ray and that it came back negative for any ligament or bone injury, so there is a chance that he could play this weekend. Just something to consider. Sun big on the transfers in, and then as you can see with the out, you have Jimenez, Kane, Barnes, Sterling, and Kelly. Kelly is primarily due to injury, which if we jump over here and take a look at his situation, it looks like he has a groin strain, and they have him listed at 75% here, and I go back here, they have him as an unknown return date, so that's one, maybe find out more information tomorrow, Friday, during the press conferences to see where he is at as far as returning or not. All right, so taking a look at some of the price rises, I like to use the FPL statistics, so give them a little bit of a shout out here. As you can see, Vestergaard is probably the most likely to jump up in price, most likely overnight. Abraham is already going up to 7.3, and it looks like he is possibly going to be going up again, and Aguero is right there on the cusp as well. As far as players dropping in price, I don't know, if you have any of these guys in your team, you probably want to get rid of them as soon as possible. But really, these are guys that aren't very highly owned. I think Matt Ryan is the closest one to dropping that has any significant ownership. But otherwise, these are all players in the 1% or less range as far as ownership goes. So not really too concerned about them. All right, so one of the things that I wanted to take a look at was some of the defenses that have actually done fairly well to start the season, surprisingly. Trying to pull up some of these teams here, and then jump over here, pull up statistics, and go to the last one. All right, so some of the interesting things that I was taking a look at is, if you look at these four teams here, Manchester United, West Ham United, Southampton, and Aston Villa, they're teams that have allowed, let's see, West Ham has allowed 2 goals, which is first, the fewest goals that have been allowed this season. Then you have a tie for second with 3 goals allowed for Southampton and Aston Villa, and then tied for third is Manchester United with 4. I think it's very interesting with them. If we look at the table here, United is in 4th with 8 points. Then you have West Ham, Southampton, Aston Villa that are all kind of down here. Villa with only 4 points, Southampton with only 7, West Ham with 8. All of these three have minus goal differences. So one of the big things is just a lot of matches where they're only allowing a goal at a time. Um, but also, Southampton, West Ham, and Aston Villa all have 2 clean sheets, while United only has 1 clean sheet. But some of the very interesting statistics, especially with Manchester United, they have the lowest XG conceded this season at 2.8. And their open play goal attempts is actually at 17, which is the second fewest behind Manchester City. And let's see, XG on target allowed is also at 3.5, which is 5th. That's kind of middle of the road there. And all of them have at least one error that's led to either a goal or a chance. Aston Villa has one of each. The others have one or the other. But Manchester United is an interesting one because of some of the underlying statistics looking really good. But then if you go and you do look at their look at some of their defense, they're relatively high as far as their team goes, but Lindelof 18, Wan-Bissaka 17. The issue, as you can see with all of them, is the lowest one here is Young at 5.4 or Lindelof at 5.4. So the issue is that their price point is prohibitive considering the lack of significant returns. When you can get somebody else who at a much cheaper price that's going to get you as many points. So I'm not advocating picking them up now, but considering some of their underlying statistics, I think it is a good chance to keep an eye on them and see how they continue to do. So far, taking a look, if you look at kind of the scoring, the rating of their goal difference by the official fantasy game, they actually have the most difficult out of these 4 teams fixtures starting the season. So if you rank them, they have at 15, so definitely the most difficult of those teams. Southampton had second most difficult at 14, West Ham had 13, and then Aston Villa at 12. So considering the difficulty of the start of their season, some of the underlying statistics are interesting to look at. And I'm also wondering, the other very interesting thing, at least for me, is looking at De Gea, who is actually at the top, tied with Gunn, as far as points for this season. Only 1 clean sheet, but still picking up 24 points is a pretty solid return, as you can see here. Actually, I'm not sure why my statistics only have 1 clean sheet when they clearly had 2. I'll have to go back and take a look at that. May have had it filtered incorrectly. But anyway, 2 clean sheets. So I'll correct myself there. Picking up 9 points, 2 points, 1 point, 2 point, and 10 points. So the 2 clean sheets is really what has carried him to his big point hauls. So, but considering how low their XG conceded has been this season, that is definitely something to keep an eye on. The other one behind them is Southampton, and their fixtures coming up are kind of mixed. If you look at the fixtures coming up ahead, both United and West Ham are at a 14 for their, if you add up all of those numbers there. Southampton is at 13, and Aston Villa has the best fixtures coming up at a 10. So looking at some of the other underlying statistics, West Ham had the highest of these with the XG conceded at 7.0. Southampton was at 5.45. Aston Villa was at 4.94. So it's a little bit tough looking at West Ham allowing 2 goals, but the XG conceded rate is at 7.04. I'm not so sure that is sustainable compared to, United allowing 4 goals, but with an XG conceded of 2.81. That seems a little more doable. Same thing, even Southampton is a little bit closer with their 5.45 and 3 goals allowed, while Aston Villa is even better with 4.94 and 3 goals allowed. So just a couple things to consider moving forward. Aston Villa is also right there in the middle of the pack at having allowed 35 goal attempts, whereas Southampton and West Ham are at 6th and 7th for the most goal attempts allowed at 49 and 46 each. So everything is just kind of close for them, especially for Southampton. They're very close as far as their XG delta. Even though the XG delta is definitely in the negative, the XG on target is actually a lot closer at 4.8 with the 3 goals allowed. Very few errors, but the XG conceded is still on the higher end. So whether or not it's sustainable is the bigger question as far as how Southampton goes. I threw United in here primarily because of looking at the difficulty of their fixtures and having done well, at least in terms of their underlying statistics. I really like the XG conceded number. But as far as the eye test goes, that's a little bit more difficult. They look shaky at times. However, I think the main reason I'm bringing them up is because they only got Maguire right at the end of the transfer window, so hasn't had a whole lot of time to gel with the team. And I feel like if they can really pick things up, I think that get Wan-Bissaka back fully healthy, having returned from international break, of course, with injury. Same thing with Shaw. Get him back injury free, then that could be a pretty solid defense. And I'm thinking more in terms of having someone like De Gea that you can trust to keep in that team at 5.6. Because if you look at him, compare him to the likes of Ederson, even Lloris is actually a pretty solid pick. He's picking up a lot of saves this season, so I could see him moving up the ranks. But comparing him to, Ederson is at 6.1. Alisson, I know, is up there, not showing up due to his injury. But, comparing him to the top-end goalkeepers, having a goalkeeper that will get you clean sheets, and even if you can just leave him in, not have to worry about rotating, I think that would be a solid price point for him. Might need some more looking at, but just something to consider. I did put in, West Ham, Aston Villa, and Southampton because of their price points. Vestergaard is currently the highest point scorer for defenders and has really been climbing. I don't know that I really don't. I don't fully trust Southampton. 11 points here was mainly from his goal scored. His other ones came from getting clean sheets, but he has also been able to pick up the bonus points, so that is a positive for him. I don't know if I fully trust that he is actually going to continue. Same thing with any of their defense. Bednarek is the next highest there at 4.5, but if you look, don't really have anybody else until you get down here to Yoshida with 9 points. So whether it's sustainable or not, I would say with all three of these teams, West Ham, Aston Villa, and Southampton is the big question. Mings and Engels are kind of the top two here with Aston Villa. I think Engels might be a pretty decent differential, especially if they can continue with this form. Now, this weekend against Arsenal, I don't think I trust them to do very well defensively. But this Burnley match, seems like a good one to be able to get a clean sheet. Same thing with the Brighton match. Now, outside of that, Norwich is going to be a tough one. They have been in great goal scoring form. Arsenal is very tough. Man City, Liverpool, even Wolves is going to be a tough one. But the Newcastle could be a very, very likely could be another clean sheet. I wouldn't be at all surprised by at least good defensive displays against United and Chelsea looking here into December. But then if you look through here, all through December looks like great fixtures for them. So somebody to keep an eye on would be, Engels and Mings, even Heaton to moving forward. And West Ham is the other one that has some decent fixtures. Even against United, who knows which United team is going to turn up for that one. That could very easily be, 0-0, 1-1 sort of match. Even a, 0-1 to West Ham for that one. Bournemouth could very easily be Bournemouth and Crystal Palace could very easily be back-to-back clean sheets. Even Everton, that seems like a pretty solid clean sheet there. Sheffield United, Newcastle, Burnley. I would say that, looking at all of their fixtures, they look very favorable in terms of picking up defenders, and especially fairly cheap defenders. Masuaku is currently suspended, but once he returns, you have a 4.5, and Diop is another one at 4.5. I think the difference there is just kind of the ownership percentages. But Fredericks is an interesting one. Might have to look at him a little closer moving forward. I hadn't really considered him, but mostly because of Diop and Masuaku. I think I would prefer Diop. He's kind of proven that he can defend well, can be somebody that can pick up points for you. So, like I said, these are 4 of the teams to kind of look at defensively moving forward. I feel like particularly West Ham have some good fixtures. Defensively, Southampton have, middling fixtures. Not really sure how that's going to go. And same thing, United have some difficult fixtures. Actually, I could pull this up and get a better idea of what it looks like. Here we have Aston Villa. I think they probably have Southampton and West Ham lower than I would actually rate them in terms of, using more of an eye test rather than straight numbers. But West Ham and Southampton both have decent fixtures. United also have some decent fixtures if they are able to put things together as far as their defense goes. Okay, so part of the reason that I wanted to take a look at all of that is because of how many, I think the big discussion point for this week and listening to a lot of podcasts is the idea of moving away from going big at the back and trying to pick up more of the lower priced defenders and moving all of that money up front to midfield and forward. As you can see here, the top ranked, you have to go down pretty far, the top ranked defender here is Vestergaard with 27 points. And then Alexander-Arnold with 24 points. And above them are all of these midfielders and forwards. After Trent Alexander-Arnold, you have Lucas Dean. Then we have to go on to the second page before we get to Van Aanholt and then Mings, followed by Van Dijk. So it looks to me like I'm going to jump on board this bandwagon. I really did think that having those high-priced defenders to start the season was going to be the way to go. I don't know if it's something that they changed in some of their scoring algorithms or if it's just that defenders aren't scoring as many points this season. I actually wouldn't be surprised by the former, just because of the way that defenders really did rise up the ranks last season and really helped to carry a lot of teams. I would not be at all surprised if they changed some things to make sure that forwards and midfielders were the ones that were getting the bulk of the points. But at the same time, teams like Liverpool and Man City just aren't scoring or aren't keeping clean sheets the way they did last year. That's one of the big things. We don't have as many clean sheets as in the past. So part of this is trying to move funds from the defense into the midfield. And I think I'll lump in, the idea of picking up a wild card here. And I took a look at this is just kind of a quick run through of looking at some of the top ranked players and the possibility that you could actually have a team that would have Gunn and Heaton in goal, Mings, Peters, Lundstrom, with Diop and Ward on the bench, followed by De Bruyne, Mane, Sterling, Mount, and Son, and then a front line of Pukki, Aguero, and Abraham, and that would actually leave you with some funds left over to be able to do a Mane to Salah swap. The thing with Mount being injured, you could always look at someone like Barkley, which would free up some extra funds as well. But the other part too is, even with this, you want to keep Mane in the midfield, bump Ward down to maybe a 4.0 defender that's just going to sit on your bench, and that would give you enough to take Abraham up to Firmino. I think that would be a very solid, very attacking team right there that would basically factor in almost all of these top forwards. The other part too is you would even be able to move Aubameyang to Aguero, Aguero to Aubameyang, be able to have Aubameyang, Firmino, Pukki, De Bruyne. I believe there's even enough in there to have Salah, so you'd have De Bruyne, Salah, Sterling, Mount, and Son. That is a powerhouse attacking line right there. Looking at Aubameyang, he's in an excellent position as far as if you really want to look ahead. Their toughest fixture in here, based on these numbers, is United away. And with United's defense, you never know what they could do if they make a mistake, and there's a goal in that for Arsenal. So Aubameyang is one to definitely look at targeting. Possibilities even, take a look at Aguero and his fixtures coming up. There's even the possibility of having Aguero and Aubameyang in your front line along with Pukki. It would probably that would be a decision point between having Aubameyang instead of maybe Sterling. I don't know that I would want to lose too much from having a Liverpool midfielder, but you could probably squeeze it in to have De Bruyne, Salah, Salah or Mane along with Pukki, Aguero, and Aubameyang, and just drop Sterling down to not even quite sure who you could drop. Maybe even Lamela. That would not be a bad one. Or Cantwell. Cantwell would be a great way to be able to squeeze some extra value up front. Allaire is still a good one that I really like. I think he is one of those fixture-proof kind of players. Something about him, I just really like him as a striker. A really great goal-scoring threat. I like watching him as, the eye definitely passes the eye test. Somebody, I think I mentioned before, I had him in my fantasy Bundesliga team last season, and he really carried me through the season. So somebody that I definitely like and would recommend. So yeah, that's kind of the discussion point surrounding both midfield and wild card. Midfield, forward, attacking line, taking a look at them. There's still the question marks about Mane versus Salah. I still prefer Salah because of his assist potential. Looking at the underlying statistics, he has much better assist potential more so than Mane. I did take a look at some of the. If you take a look at the ICT influence, the ICT threat, and index, there are a few players that pop up actually within the top 10 on all three of those indices. Let's see, take the index here. So some of those are like right here. You do have Sterling, Aguero, Pukki, Salah, Aubameyang. I think those are the ones that show up actually on all three of these statistics. So this is the index itself is the FPL asset combining influence, creativity, and threat scores. But I wanted to break it down even more to look at some of the others as well. So you do have the threat score, the Sterling tops, and then as well as the influence. And that is another one that, if you take a look at it, you have Pukki, Aguero, Salah, Aubameyang, and Sterling that are in the top 10. I think actually the lowest one out of any of those is Aubameyang, the 7th on the index. But otherwise, everybody is in the top 6 out of all of those. There are a few others that are on 2 of those. So Mane, De Bruyne, and Firmino that actually shows up on both the influence and the index. So Mane and De Bruyne show up on the influence and the index, whereas Firmino shows up on, he's actually 2nd for threat. And so he shows up on the threat and the index in the top 10. So those are just a few things to consider when you're looking at bringing in some players. Like I said, I think one of the big differences there is the Mane versus Salah argument. I like Salah still because of his assist potential, which you can, and if you can see here, he's like just barely above Mane for the influence. But if we go down then to creativity, they are also very close to each other here. The difference is, Salah is the one that actually gets gets more of the assists, and this is looking back to last year's statistics as well. So, and who knows, maybe Mane is going to pick it up and start to have more assists, in which case, he would be the better one to have for sure. The issue is he is going to be rising in price at 11.6 right now, and if he continues to score goals like he did, like he has already done, 2 goals last week, then he is somebody that you probably want to have in your team. Now, I think the big thing to think of is what that extra 0.9 is going to do for you. If that extra 0.9 is going to make a difference and you can bring in somebody like Aubameyang or Aguero up front, then yes, by all means go with Mane over Salah. But if it's not really that much of a difference, then maybe you do want to stick with Salah. And I'm actually looking at some of this here. I might even be talking myself out of Salah over Mane. So anyway, I think that is basically where I'm going to leave it. As I said, this is one of the places I go to for the FPL fixture difficulty rankings at thefootballfallout.com. Go ahead and check them out and see what they have there. This is for the next 4 game weeks. If you want to look ahead to the next 5, which would take into account the fixtures following the next international break. That might be something worthwhile. Okay, so I think right there is where I will leave it. So hopefully everybody has a wonderful game week this week. Lots of green arrows, and as always, wish you good luck and have fun.